I planned a romantic dinner to tell my wife I finally paid off her student loans, but when I opened the bank app to show her, I saw she had drained our savings account to help her brother buy a sports car. My hard work was thrown away in one swipe. I need to tell about the worst decision I ever made. Not the cheating itself, that came later. The worst decision was thinking I was entitled to more than what I had. Sarah and I had been together for 8 years, married for 3. She was everything I thought I wanted: kind, supportive, gorgeous in that natural way that doesn't need makeup. She worked as a teacher while I climbed the corporate ladder in finance. We had our little house, our weekend routines, our inside jokes. But somewhere along the way I started feeling restless. It began with small thoughts. I'm 32 and this is it. What if I settled too young? Other guys seem to have more exciting lives. Social media didn't help. Every scroll showed former college friends with their glamorous wives at exotic locations, while Sarah and I were home watching Netflix in our pajamas. The thoughts grew louder when I got promoted to senior analyst. Suddenly I was making real money, 6 figures for the first time in my. I started working longer hours, going to company events, meeting new people. That's where I met her. Jessica worked in marketing for one of our client firms. Tall, confident, the kind of woman who commanded attention when she walked into a room. She wore designer clothes and talked about art galleries and tastings. Everything Sarah wasn't. Our first interaction was purely professional. A project meeting that ran late, then drinks with the team afterward. She laughed at my jokes, complimented my presentation skills, made me feel intelligent and successful. You're not like most finance guys, she said, leaning closer at the bar. Most of them are so boring. I should have gone home to Sarah. Instead, I stayed for another drink. The flirting was subtle at first. Extended eye contact during meetings. Text messages about work that didn't quite need to be sent. Coffee meetings that stretched longer than necessary. My husband never talks to me about work, she mentioned one day. Wait, husband? She wore no ring, never mentioned him. We're basically roommates at this point. I told we were just friends, work friends. Nothing wrong with having a connection with a colleague, right? Sarah had her teacher friends she grabbed drinks with. This was the same thing. Except it wasn't, and I knew it. The moment everything changed was during our company's annual conference in Chicago. 3 days, fancy hotel evening events. Sarah couldn't come because it was during the school year, and she had parent-teacher conferences. Have fun, honey, she said, kissing me goodbye at the airport. Don't work too hard. Jessica and I ended sitting together on the flight. 2 hours of uninterrupted conversation about everything except our spouses. She talked about her dreams of starting her own consulting firm, her frustration with feeling stuck. I found sharing things I'd never told Sarah. My fear that I'd peaked too early in my career, my worry that I was becoming boring and predictable. Or not boring, she said, her hand briefly touching mine on the armrest. Just need someone who appreciates ambition. The conference was 3 days of professional sessions punctuated by increasingly personal conversations. We grabbed lunch together, sat next to each other during presentations, found ourselves lingering in the hotel bar after evening events. On the second night, after too many drinks and too much talk about our complicated home lives, she invited me to her room. Just to talk, she said. I don't want to be alone right now. I stood in that hotel hallway for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds. I thought about Sarah, probably grading papers at our kitchen table with her reading glasses on, maybe texting me to ask how the conference was going. I thought about our wedding vows. About the trust in her eyes when she said goodbye at the airport. About the we'd built together. Then I thought about feeling wanted, desired, exciting. About this successful, beautiful woman who saw something in me that I worried Sarah had stopped seeing. I knocked on Jessica's door. Nothing happened that night, we really did just talk. But we both knew the line had been crossed. We were in her room on her bed, sharing secrets and complaints about our marriages like conspirators planning a heist. The actual betrayal happened the next night. We'd spent the day in sessions, stealing glances, the tension building like a storm. During the closing dinner, she texted me, Rube 4012. 1 hour. I made my excuses to colleagues and took the elevator, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. When she opened the door in that black dress, looking at me like I was the only man who'd ever mattered, all my resistance crumbled. What happened next destroyed my marriage, my family, my relationship with my kids, and ultimately my relationship with. But in that moment, all I could think about was how alive I felt. Afterwards, lying in her hotel bed while she showered, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what I'd done. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Hope we're having a good time. Emma lost her first tooth today. She's so excited to tell when get home. Love, and Emma. Our 6-year-old daughter with Sarah's smile and my stubborn streak, who thought I was the greatest man alive, who ran to the door screaming daddy. Whenever I came home from work, I stared at that text until the words blurred, but I didn't feel the crushing guilt I expected. Instead, I felt nothing, empty. Like I'd traded something precious for something shiny. And Jessica came out of the bathroom, beautiful and confident, already talking about when we could see each other again. This doesn't have to complicate anything, she said, sitting on the bed beside me. We're both adults. We both know what this is. I nodded and agreed, but inside I was already calculating how to live with what I'd done, how to look Sarah in the eye, how to hug my daughter without feeling like the flight home was. Every mile closer to my family felt like descending deeper into. Jessica sat 3 rows ahead, occasionally glancing back with a secret smile that made my stomach turn. Sarah picked me at the airport, Emma bouncing in her car seat, both of them so happy to see me. Sarah had made my favorite dinner. Emma had drawn me a picture of our family, stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, welcome daddy written in purple crayon. How was the conference? Sarah asked over dinner, her hand resting on mine. Good, I managed. Productive, boring conference stuff. Well, I missed, she said, squeezing my fingers. Both did. Emma nodded enthusiastically, showing me her gap tooth grin. The tooth fairy brought me $5 whole, daddy. I smiled and praised her and acted like the loving husband and father they believed me to be. But inside, I was drowning. That night, as Sarah slept curled against me, her breathing soft and trusting, I stared at the ceiling and realized I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could lie to the people who loved him most. Someone who would do it again. Because the worst part wasn't the guilt, it was how easy it had been. How simple it was to compartmentalize, to justify, to convince that what Sarah didn't know couldn't hurt. I told it was a one-time mistake. A moment of weakness that would never happen again. But deep down, I already knew I was lying to just like I was lying to her. The affair with Jessica lasted 8 months. 8 months of sneaking around, elaborate lies and stolen moments that felt electric and wrong in equal measure. 8 months of coming home to my family with another woman's secrets burning in my chest. And Sarah never suspected a thing. The affair became my second job. Managing schedules, creating alibis, remembering which lies I told to whom. It was exhausting, but I was good at it, which scared me more than anything. Jessica and I fell into a routine. Lunch meetings that ran long. After work drinks that led to hotel rooms, weekend client visits, that Sarah never questioned because she trusted me completely. Been working so hard lately, Sarah would say, massaging my shoulders after another 14-hour day. Don't out. The guilt should have killed me. Instead it became background noise like living next to train tracks. Stop hearing the sound after a while. I started justifying everything. Sarah and I had fallen into a rut. When was the last time she gotten dressed for me? When was the last time we'd had a real conversation about something other than Emma's school or household expenses? Jessica made me feel alive, successful, desired. Wasn't I entitled to happiness too? The lies multiplied like cancer cells. Small ones at first, stuck in traffic, client emergency, team dinner ran late. Then bigger ones that required planning business trips, made conferences, an entirely fictional client in another city that required monthly visits. I became a master of misdirection. Started fights with Sarah over small things so I'd have an excuse to storm out. Accused her of being distant and unsupportive when she was actually being patient with my increasingly erratic behavior. Never want to do anything anymore. I'd snap when she suggested staying in to watch a movie night I'd have to skip for Jessica anyway. I'm just tired, honey, Sarah would say, confused by my sudden hostility. Work's been stressful, and Emma's been having nightmares. But I was already out the door, phone buzzing with Jessica's latest message. The most sickening part was how good I got at playing the devoted husband in front of others. At Emma's school events I'd wrap my arm around Sarah, kiss her cheek, laugh at her jokes. Other parents would comment on what a perfect couple we were. To our relationship goals, our neighbor Kelly said at a backyard barbecue, watching Sarah and me share a drink, 8 years and still look at each other like newlyweds. If only she knew I'd been with Jessica just hours before, planning our next rendezvous while Sarah made potato salad in our kitchen. Emma started asking why Daddy was always on his phone, why Daddy missed bedtime stories, why Daddy seemed angry all the time. Daddy's just busy with work, sweetheart. Sarah would explain me concerned looks I pretended not to notice. The breaking point came during Emma's 7th birthday party. I'd promised to leave work early, help set decorations, be present for once. Instead, Jessica texted about a fork emergency that needed my immediate attention. I told Sarah I'd be an hour late. 2 hours, 3. I finally showed as they were serving cake. Emma's eyes red from crying. Sarah's smile strained and brittle. Daddy missed the games, Emma whispered when I hugged her. Mommy said be here. I'm sorry, princess, I said, the words hollow even to me. Daddy had to work. But she pulled away, not quite looking at me, and I realized something had shifted. The unconditional adoration in her eyes had dimmed. Sarah pulled me aside later, after Emma was in bed. This has to stop, she said quietly. Whatever's going on at work, it's affecting our family. Emma cried for an hour before the party started because she thought wouldn't come. I had to lie and tell her to be here any minute. It's not that simple, I said, immediately defensive. Don't understand the pressure I'm under. This promotion could change everything for us. What promotion? She asked. Haven't mentioned any promotion. Panic flashed through me. There was no promotion. Just another lie I'd forgotten I'd told. It's still developing, I stammered. I didn't want to get hopes. She studied my face, and for a moment I thought she saw through everything. But then she just sighed. She said. Even when here, we're not really here. I feel like I'm raising Emma alone. I should have confessed everything right then. Fallen to my knees, begged forgiveness, ended the affair immediately. Instead I got angry. That's not fair, I said. I'm working my tail off for this family. Everything I do is for an Emma, is it? She asked quietly. Because it feels like are doing it for someone else entirely. The accuracy of that statement hit like a physical, but I covered it with more anger. I can't win with, I said. Work too little, complain we don't have enough money. Work too much, complain I'm never here. What do you want from me? She looked at me with such sadness that I almost broke. I want my husband back, she said. I want Emma's father back. I want to feel like we matter too. But I was in too deep. The affair had become an addiction, Jessica had become an obsession, and admitting the truth felt impossible. Or being dramatic, I said and walked away. That night, lying in bed pretending to sleep while Sarah quietly cried beside me, I knew I was destroying everything good in my. But I couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, because Jessica made me feel like the man I thought I deserved to be, while Sarah just reminded me of who I actually was, a cheating, lying who was betraying the people who loved him most. The end began on a Tuesday in March. Jessica texted during lunch, can't do this anymore. My husband found out again. Just like that, 8 months of deception and betrayal ended with a text message. I called her immediately, but her number was disconnected. Drove to her office, but security said she'd resigned. Sent emails that bounced back undelivered. She'd vanished from my as suddenly as she'd entered it, leaving me with nothing but the wreckage of my marriage and the devastating realization that I'd thrown away everything real for something that was never meant to last. But the damage was done. I'd spent 8 months becoming someone Sarah wouldn't recognize, someone Emma couldn't trust, someone I hated looking at in the mirror. And the worst part, I still hadn't told them the truth. I was going to try to go back to being the husband and father they remembered, as if the betrayal had never happened, as if I could just pretend my way back to innocence. For 3 months after Jessica disappeared, I tried to rebuild what I'd destroyed without ever admitting what I'd done. I into being the perfect husband and father, desperately overcompensating for 8 months of neglect and lies. I planned surprise date nights, bought Sarah flowers for no reason, never missed another bedtime story. I coached Emma's soccer team, organized family game nights, took on more household chores. It's nice to have back, Sarah said one evening, curled beside me on the couch. Whatever was going on at work seems to have resolved itself. I nodded, stroking her hair, pretending my heart wasn't hammering with guilt. I realized I was letting the wrong things take priority, I said, which was technically true. For a while I thought I might actually pull it off. The lies about Jessica became easier to carry when they were in the past tense. I convinced that what Sarah didn't know really couldn't hurt, that I could love her enough to make for what I'd done. But secrets have weight, they press against chest, thoughts leak out in 1,000 tiny ways don't expect. I jumped every time Sarah's phone buzzed, panicked when she mentioned running into people from my office, started having nightmares where Emma discovered what I'd done and refused to hug me goodnight. The paranoia was eating me alive, but I told it was worth it to preserve my family. Then Sarah's phone rang on a Saturday morning in June. Hello, she answered, laughing at something Emma was doing with her cereal. Yes, this is Sarah Morrison. I watched her face change. The smile faded, replaced by confusion, then something harder to read. I'm sorry, who is this? She asked. How did get this number? My turn to ice. I think there's been a mistake, Sarah continued, but her voice was strained now. My husband wouldn't. No, that's not. She looked at me, and I saw my entire world cracking in her eyes. Can hold on a moment, she said into the phone, then covered the receiver. Ani, do you know anyone named Jessica Richardson? The name hit me like a freight train. Jessica's married name, which she'd never used with me. But somehow someone with that information was calling my wife. Jessica Richardson, I repeated slowly, mind racing, doesn't ring a bell. Why? This woman says she needs to speak with me about her, Sarah said. Says it's important. Every muscle in my body tensed. This couldn't be happening. Jessica had vanished, disappeared completely. Why would she be calling now 3 months later? That's weird, I said, trying to sound casual. Probably some kind of. Know how these things work. They get information somehow and try to cause problems. Sarah studied my face, and I could see her processing my reaction, comparing it to the voice on the phone. Maybe, she said slowly. Then, into the phone. I'm sorry, but I think I have the wrong number. Please don't call here again. She hung but kept staring at me. That was strange, she said. She seemed to know specific things. Said work together, that Dean been involved. Involved how? I asked, though I knew exactly what that meant. She said been having an affair. The word hung in the air between us like a loaded. That's crazy, I said, forcing a laugh. Why would some random woman call here making stories about me? But Sarah wasn't laughing. She was studying my face with the careful attention of someone looking for cracks in a facade. She knew middle name, Sarah said quietly. She knew where went to college. She knew about the conference in Chicago last year. My heart was so hard I was sure she could hear it. Lots of people know that stuff, I said. My LinkedIn profile, company directory. She knew about Emma's birthday party, Sarah said. The one missed most of. She said we're with her instead. The room started spinning. How could Jessica possibly know about Emma's party? I'd never told her why I was late that day. Unless she'd been watching, following me, checking on my family. Sarah, I said, reaching for her hand. This is obviously someone trying to mess with our marriage. Maybe a disgruntled coworker. Or, she pulled her hand away. Look me in the eye, she said. Tell me you've never cheated on me. The moment stretched between us like a chasm. Emma was still eating her cereal, humming softly, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to shatter. I could have kept lying. Should have kept lying maybe. But something in Sarah's voice, the way she was looking at me like she was seeing a stranger, broke something inside me. Sarah, I started, and she knew immediately. Oh God, she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, it's true. Let me explain, I said desperately. So it didn't mean all along, she asked, her voice barely audible. It's over, I said. It's been over for months. I ended it, Sarah. I chose our family. How long? She repeated louder now. Emma looked from her cereal, sensing the tension. Mummy, she said. Okay, go watch cartoons in the living room, sweetheart, Sarah said, not taking her eyes off me. Mommy and Daddy need to talk. Emma left, and Sarah asked again. How long? 8 months, I whispered. She gasped like I'd punched her in the stomach. 8 months, she repeated. Emma's birthday. Our anniversary, Christmas morning, we're with her through all of that. Not during, I said quickly. I mean, not during the actual events, but yes, around that time. Get out, she said quietly. Sarah, please. Let me explain what happened, how it started, why I ended it. Gio? She screamed, and I heard Emma start crying in the next room. I left, drove to my brother's house, called in sick to work, spent 3 days on his couch drinking and staring at the ceiling while he tried to make sense of what I'd told him. Had Sarah, he said on the second day. Why they would throw that away? I didn't have an answer that made sense even to me. Sarah filed for divorce the following week, refused to speak to me except through lawyers, changed the locks on our house, opened her own bank account, started making plans for that didn't include me. Emma was the worst part. When I picked her for my court-ordered visitation weekends, she was quiet and distant. No more running to the door, no more, Daddy's home, excitement. Why don't live with us anymore? She asked during our second weekend together. Mommy and Daddy are having some problems, I said, hating how inadequate the word sounded. Did do something bad. I looked at my 7-year-old daughter, her eyes wide and trusting despite everything, and felt something inside me. Yes, I said. Daddy made some very bad choices. Can say sorry and come home. It's not that simple, princess. She nodded solemnly like she understood more than she should have to. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Sarah got the house, primary custody, half of everything I'd worked for. I got a studio apartment and weekends with Emma. At the hearing, Sarah finally looked directly at me for the first time since that phone call. I loved, she said quietly. I would have done anything for, anything. I wanted to tell her I loved her too, that I still loved her, that I'd thrown away the best thing in my for something that meant nothing. But the time for those words had passed. A year later, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah was dating someone. A teacher from her school, apparently. Someone who showed to Emma's events helped with homework, made them both laugh again. Emma mentioned him during one of our dinners. Mr. Peterson taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels, she said proudly. That's great, sweetheart, I said, my heart breaking a little more. He's really nice, daddy. He brings mommy flowers and makes funny voices when he reads bedtime stories. I smiled and nodded and told her I was happy she liked him, but inside I was dying. This man was doing all the things I should have been doing. Being the father I'd chosen not to be when I was too busy destroying my family. 2 years after the divorce, Sarah married him. Emma was the flower girl. I found out through Facebook photos that mutual friends tagged me in, probably not realizing how much it would. There they were, my daughter in a white dress, beaming at the camera, and my ex-wife in her wedding dress, looking happier than I'd seen her in years. Her new husband's hand on Emma's shoulder, both of them looking at Sarah with pure adoration. The family I'd lost. The family I'd thrown away for 8 months of hotel rooms and text messages, and the temporary thrill of feeling wanted by someone who disappeared the moment things got complicated. I still see Emma every other weekend, though she's 11 now and increasingly busy with friends and activities. She's polite but distant, like I'm a family friend rather than her father. She calls her stepfather, Dad, sometimes catching herself and apologizing like it hurts me. It does, but not as much as knowing I earned every bit of that distance. Last month at her school play, I watched from the audience as she performed with confidence and joy, scanning the crowd afterward for approval. She found Sarah and her husband first, ran to them for hugs and praise. I was an afterthought, a polite hug and, thanks for coming, before she turned back to the family that was actually there for her. I drive home to my empty apartment afterward, past the house that used to be mine, where the lights are warm and golden and the family inside is complete without me. I owe everything I ever wanted for something I never actually had, and now I get to live with that choice for the rest of my. Some mistakes can fix, apologize for, learn from. But some mistakes carve permanent scars, not just on the people, but on the person discover actually are when the chips are down. I'm 35 years old, and I learned too late that the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just a different shade of artificial when you're standing on top of the grave dug for own happiness.